Welcome back. So during last lesson, we talked about U.S. history. We talked about how the United States came to be, and we briefly touched on the United States Constitution. So today, we will dive a little bit more into what the Constitution is and how the Constitution applies to our daily lives as somebody that lives in the United States. So, as we talked about briefly yesterday, the US Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That means that there is no other law above the United States Constitution. For example, we know that we have 50 states. Each of those 50 states have a constitution. Those states are divided into counties, and those counties have charters. The counties then are divided into municipalities or cities, which also have charters. So, none of those constitutions and none of those charters can go against the US Constitution. The United States Constitution gives us basic protections as people living in the United States, and it grants special rights that only apply to citizens. So, what does the US Constitution do? The US Constitution sets up the government. What does that mean? The US Constitution tells us that the government has to be divided in three branches: the legislative, that is Congress; the executive, which is the president, vice president, and the cabinet; and judicial, which is the Supreme Court. The Constitution also tells us that the government has to be divided into the federal government, which is the national government, and then the local government, which are the states, the counties, or the parishes, and the municipalities or the cities. So it defines what each of those branches do. That means it articulates the balance of power. The balance of power means that no branch is above any other branch, and that each branch is able to cancel each other. As we learned before, the legislative branch, Congress, makes laws, but those laws have to be passed to the president so he can sign them. If the president does not sign the law, he vetoes the law. So the president has the power of veto over Congress. But if Congress has enough votes, they may also override the veto. Now, the Supreme Court may say, Congress passed this law, the president signed it, but somebody's arguing that such law goes against the Constitution. Therefore, that law may be overturned. So the Supreme Court has the ability to overturn laws. If they say the law that the Congress passed and the president signed goes against the Constitution, then that law cannot be implemented. Right? So that shows us the balance of power between the three branches of government. Also, it establishes that each state has a degree of independence. Each state may have their own constitution, their own three branches of government, and live free. However, they cannot do certain things. For example, a state may not print their own money. A state may not declare war on a foreign country or to other states. So even though the states are independent, they still have to be under the umbrella of the national government, under the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution says that the only one that can declare war is Congress. The U.S. Constitution says that the only one that can print money is the federal government, and the only one that can make international treaties is the federal government. It also says that the federal government has the right to regulate interstate commerce. Now, when it comes to protections, those are called rights. A right is a freedom you have and a protection you have, something that the government cannot take away from you. So basically, a right is your fundamental state of being while in the United States. So the government, for example, cannot force you to worship a certain religion. The government cannot force you to house soldiers in a time of peace, and many others. Now, why is that? The US Constitution was set up with the idea of self-government. Self-government means that the people have the right to govern themselves. The preamble to the Constitution says, "We, the people," a government for the people, by the people. How does that work? It works through representative democracy. The United States is a representative democracy. That means we elect our leaders so they can make laws to govern us, right? So citizens elect the president. Citizens elect Congress. Congress makes the laws. The president signs them. The president protects us from foreign threats. The Congress establishes taxes. The Congress establishes what those taxes are spent on. So we as the people elect politicians, representatives and senators to do those jobs. That means that is already the idea of self-government. We the people, we have the ability to elect those who will voice us in government. Now, the Constitution is something that is not set in stone. The Constitution is a living, breathing document that can be amended. An amendment means that the Constitution can be changed. And that is important because over time, society changes, values change. So it's important to make sure that there is a system in place to reflect such changes. Currently, the United States has 27 amendments. 27. Each of them address a particular problem. For example, the first 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights. These 10 amendments are your basic rights as a person living in the United States. When the Constitution was originally made, it did not have these 10 amendments. So, in order for it to be completely ratified, they had to add them. So, the Bill of Rights has 10 basic has 10 basic parts or 10 basic rights that cannot be taken away. They are there, and no other law can take them away. So the First Amendment to the Constitution guarantees freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of the press. So freedom of religion means that you have the right to practice any religion or no religion at all. So when we talk about freedom of religion, we talked about that the government cannot tell you which religion you must belong to. The government cannot force you to pray to a God that you do not believe in, and you cannot be forced to be part of a religion to participate in government. So that is what it means to have freedom of religion. So if you remember from yesterday's lesson, we talked about the Pilgrims and how England was an Anglican country. You had to be an Anglican in order to participate in the civic life and have full rights as a British subject. So when they moved from England to the Netherlands and then from the Netherlands to the US, or not to the US but the colonies, I'm sorry, they were looking for that religious freedom. So when the founding fathers created the Constitution, that was the first thing they thought of, that everybody had to be free to worship, and regardless of their faith, they should be able to participate fully in the civic life of the country. Back then, each of the colonies had different religions. For example, Maryland was Catholic. I think Pennsylvania was Amish and Methodist. And the Amish were fearful that they may be infringed on their rights uh, of worship the way they do by the government. So they were ensured that that was not going to happen. So in the First Amendment, that first part was that the country will not have an official religion. So you can be a Muslim, you can be a Jewish person, you can be a Christian, you can be a Hindu, You can be a, a Taoist, any religion, or no religion. So if you are an atheist, if you do not believe in a God, you also have that right, and you also have the right to fully participate in the civic life of the country. Now, the other rights are freedom of expression. That means that you can express yourself freely. You can say anything and talk about anything. Of course, there are limitations. If you lie and those lies cause harm, that's not protected speech. Protected speech is basically you can make up a novel, you can draw something, you can create a movie, you can give a speech, right? So the government will not stop you. There will maybe there may be social consequences to that speech, but the government cannot stop you. However, if you incite rebellion, if you incite violence, if your speech directly causes death or harm, then yes, there are limits to that. The other part is freedom of the press. That means that you as a citizen have the right to inform other citizens. In the old days, it was your right as a citizen to create your own newspaper. Nowadays, not so much your own newspaper, but you can have your website and publish local news. You can have your blog, you can have your TikTok, you can have your YouTube, and talk about any topic you want. And again, with certain limitations, because if it's harmful, that's not protected speech. Now we talk about the public square versus a private enterprise. That would be a completely different topic, so we are not really going to touch on that. And then the other freedom in the First Amendment is the freedom of assembly. That means we can freely come together as a group. We can peacefully protest the government. So we can say we are not happy with this situation. We can come together in public spaces and demand change. Peacefully. Peacefully. That's the key. Right? So we do not fear the government basically forbidding us from gathering, right? Because of political speech. Because of political speech. Now, there are four amendments that have to do with voting. So, like I said before, at the beginning, the Constitution was very specific. Males, white males with property, uh, who were 21 and older could vote. Then it changed to white men, 21 and older, could vote. Then it changed to black and white men. Then it changed again to women and men, regardless of race. And then it changed from 21 to 18. Each of those changes was because social pressure, right? There are other amendments in the Constitution that, again, over time, change how things or how people could vote. So, for example, there are no poll taxes. So before you had to pay a fee or a tax to vote. That's illegal now. Like I said before, only men could vote. first only white men, then after the end of slavery, white and black men, and then it changed to white men, black men, and women of any race, right? So, and then it changed from 21 to 20 to 18, sorry. And I think I might have made a mistake at the beginning, so I apologize about that. So again, we can see that the Constitution is amended as things change and things evolve. Now, how is this possible? This is possible because the American system is based on the rule of law. The idea of the rule of law is that nobody, absolutely nobody, is above the law. It means that the poorest and the richest, the weakest and the most powerful have to obey the same law and have to be under the same system. It believes that everybody is equal under the law. Now, the second part, again, it came about through changes because that was not always the case, right? But that's the basic philosophy on how the American system works. Everybody has to obey the law, so it doesn't matter if you are the president of the United States, it doesn't matter if you are the ice cream vendor on the street. Everybody has to obey the law. Everybody has to pay taxes. Everybody has to obey the speed limit. Everybody has uh, to attend jury duty, right? So those kind of things. Everybody is equal under the law, regardless again of sex, regardless of national origin, ethnicity, etc., etc. And I put an asterisk because nowadays there are some controversies, but we won't really address them on this video. All right, so now that we explored a little bit about the US Constitution, I want you to get into small groups and talk about the differences between the US system and the system in your own native country. Is it similar? Is it different? Uh, how does the law work over there? Do you have any rights over there? Do you have less rights or more rights? What rights you have here that you do not have there, or what rights you had there that you do not have here? So let's take about 15-20 minutes to talk about it with our classmates. For our guest teacher, please facilitate the discussion and kind of, carry on the conversation to give them about 15-20 minutes to talk amongst themselves, and then have an open forum with everybody and kind of talk about the topic. So once this is done, it's okay to watch English for All on the link that I put on the document. So basically, once they finish the discussion and everybody had a chance to participate and talk about it, they will do the English for All quiz, which I think I left you on top of the keyboard that we use for the ViewSonic. And then the answer key is on the back. So what you're going to do as a guest teacher is read the questions to them, just the blue parts, and then let them work by themselves on the rest. Once they are finished with the quiz, show them the video that I linked on the document, and at the end they know what to do. All right. So I want to thank you as the guest teacher, and I want to thank you guys for sticking around. And I will see you on Monday. All right. Have a great day.